if you go in to a hearing on a protective order without a lawyer, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever she wants to make up.
Thank you for jumping on another episode of Daddy Issues. And I'm going to let our guest introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his story.
Hey, hello, everybody. It's good to meet you. I'm basically a single dad of 3 kids. My kids are 12, 8, and 6. I also own a law firm. I'm a practicing lawyer, and I do a lot of family law. So really why I'm appearing here is to try and help you guys out. I have a personal story that is probably similar to many of yours. And so I think ultimately I could be helpful to you guys.
Yeah. And now, did you get into family law because of this situation, or were you already pursuing that when you were still married?
I was already pursuing that when I was still married. My dad was an attorney for 30 years in California. So I just sort of wanted to get into that sort of law because I saw it growing up. And it was definitely the proper choice for me going forward.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it probably sparked you a little bit more once you were going through that situation.
So much, and because I was part of the court system itself. I was involved in it, and at the time, I wasn't an experienced lawyer. I hadn't done much, and so being subjected to it at that early point in my career, I kind of saw how the guys were treated, how the moms were treated, and it definitely gave me some perspective going forward. So here's the thing, and this is true, was true in my situation, currently still is true. There are bad guys out there. Okay, no doubt about it. There are bad guys, but there are also bad women, right? And when I say bad, I mean, kind of the narcissistic personality, the people who will, try and manipulate others to kind of influence opinion about the other spouse. Okay. And so our society in general, we've just come off of years and years of different movements who have been essentially structured to, point the finger at, guys, not all guys, but some guys, and say, men are bad. So the Me Too movement, um, all that kind of stuff, while it didn't explicitly say all guys are bad, we have the impression that, some guys can be really bad. And that has been part of the general idea in the society and the media going forward, at least definitely on the left. So now when you walk into a courtroom and you don't want this to be true, but this is true. And I tell clients sometimes this very thing is that, all that stuff that came before you, the Me Too movement, all these bad guys that have run through family court, there's an impression that all that leaves on a person. And whether they admit it or not, they watch TV just like everybody else. They watch YouTube videos just like everybody else. And so there's a perception, even if you were a great guy, a great dad, even if you're a great person, there's just a perception that, the general societal agreement that the mother is a nurturer, the mother is mom, everybody loves their mom, and the guy maybe he's not that great, and so dealing with that sucked.
Yeah, it almost seems too like the Me Too movement was, believe all women first, and whatever they say is kind of the standard. And but it also applies to when you go to court and you make these false allegations, especially when it comes to kids or anything, like you're abusing all of this stuff. The dad then has to work his way up. He's guilty until he proves his innocence.
That's a great way to put it. Is that and that's exactly what I was trying to say. Is that the dad? You kind of start at this position. That the general societal understanding that guys are kind of not that great to begin with. And so you got to make people see that you're awesome, right? And the moms don't necessarily have that same kind of problem because a lot of times it's just accepted when they walk into court. It's a mom, she's doing what she can, and then all of the public persona, the perception, the media reinforces that fact, the absent father, the abuser, you know. And so, sometimes you'll get your, you know, spouse who will play that up. Even if you are a great guy, if a lot of people don't know you, she can say whatever she wants about you and people will believe it because they don't know you. So they figure, well, you're just another dirtbag. And trying to fight against that in court is always an uphill battle.
Now, did you have a lawyer or did you go pro se when you did it because you were studying that?
So I started pro se, um, and I had to fight, and there's no reason that I should have had to have fought, right? But I had to fight from the very beginning, like right when we split up to today. I've had to fight tooth and nail to see my kids as much as possible. And it's been difficult. And so to answer your question, yeah, I did get representation later on, intermittently throughout the battle.
Yeah, I would think that that's because I've had representation the whole time, but I hear a lot of dads they want to go pro se. They don't have a lot of money to get an attorney or something like that. But I think it's so important because like it's such an important thing, especially with children. It's like when you get your final, that's until they're 18, unless you can go back into court and change it. But it's like very important things happen, and you can't mess it up. And if you go pro se, I feel like you're not going to understand or know all of the things going on. And it,
Right.
it actually, from what you did, you went pro se, but then you were like, oh, I need to get an attorney to handle this.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's just I just think it's so important for people to actually get an attorney instead of going pro se. As much as I would love to say save your money and learn. I mean, obviously, still learn as much as you can about the situation, but an attorney is very important.
Well, and also on that point, a lot of these women, well, and men too, but more often it's the women, they will file protective orders that have zero basis in fact, that are completely fabricated, right? And I'm actually quite surprised that one was never filed against me, you know, with all the other stuff that happened. But they will be completely baseless if you go in to a hearing on a protective order without a lawyer. You're kind of at the mercy of whatever she wants to make up. So I mean,
Mm.
you know, I would definitely suggest if you're going through something like that, get counsel immediately, because you don't want to be facing all these false accusations, these fabricated emails, all the stuff that they can try to hold against you without counsel, because the counsel would just object to everything and get it thrown out.
Now, why, like, when women do this, when women do false allegations, or they're lying on their financial affidavit, or they're just making up all this stuff, how come I mean, I don't want to say allowed, but like, there's no repercussion, or it doesn't seem like there's very much repercussion for women when they do something like this. The man has to prove he's innocent, and then it's like, okay, you're good. We found no signs of abuse or no signs of anything. Just keep going.
So
You know what I
I
mean?
mean, so in both my personal life and the legal case, I've dealt with that, and the reason is because they have that mom thing, and by that I mean, well, she had to deal with this asshole. He's just such a dick. She's just trying her best. She just has this rough time, so it just makes sense that she would say this about him. And in the meantime, she was the abuser, right? She was coming after the guy with a hammer. She was, doing crazy things, trying to kill him, right? But, because there isn't a sufficient record that she was behaving that way, she can make up anything that she wants. And people will just believe it because they have no other basis and they're not going to talk to this asshole. right? They're not going to go talk to her ex because who'd want to do that? And so by doing that consistently over a long period of time, she's able to essentially write the narrative. And so her story just becomes the story, and people just accept. Well, he's just an asshole. That's all. I mean, he's just an abuser. He's a dick, and no one will go to the guy. And this happens. And I have talked to so many single dads, so many clients who this has happened to. No one goes to them and says, "Hey, man, I heard you were this dick. Like, I heard you were this abuser and you did all this crazy." Like, no one ever asks that, right? They're just like, they
Yeah.
just regard him like, "Oh, yeah, I heard about that guy." And so because of that, you have all these single dads who are like ostracized and put in these horrible positions, are not really able to like function as parents in the community. And it's simply from the power of rumor that has no basis in fact at all, right? It's
Right.
just from consistently and constantly trashing the guy every time his name comes up, because she gets the chance. Oh, they see these kids running around. Where's their dad? Who's their dad? Tell me about their dad. And so every single day, constantly she gets a chance to tell her story. And then people won't, if it, and other single dads will probably agree with me. If you're in the park, do parents come up to you and start talking to you about your kids? Maybe once in a while, almost never, right? If you're a guy, right? Because you're the dad, it's just that's the society thing again. It's just single dads are looked at in a certain way and generally don't become a part of those communities. And it's sad and it's wrong, but that's how it works.
Right. Yeah. You see all the moms huddled up together at the park, and then the dad's over, doing his own thing.
And they just right, and they'll just kind of regard him like, oh, there's that guy. You see that guy? You know that guy? Yeah, there he is. Let's go. It's like, come talk to me, dude. I'm all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like I just recently, I've been joining these Facebook groups, and I didn't really realize how many men are going through something like this. Like there's 70,000 men in one group, 50,000 in another group. But when you have the way I look at it is like when you have these dads in these groups trying to get help, trying to see, trying to figure out how they can see their kids more, really they're not bad dads. Like it doesn't,
Exactly.
if they didn't want to be in their kids' lives, they would just fucking be gone. They would just be out and deal with whatever the consequence, child support or whatever, but they wouldn't be trying to fight for their kids.
And a lot of them have fought like me, like have fought tooth and nail to see your kids, like spent tens of
Yeah.
thousands of dollars, all your time, you know, like had their kids show up to their house and said, mommy says you're this, mommy, just their kids are being manipulated, had to put their kids in
Oh, that's
therapy.
my story. Yeah.
Yeah, mine too. And
Yep.
and and but if you ask some parent on the street, it's like, oh no, that guy's an asshole. He's this, he's that. And because as a single dad, a lot of them, most of them that I've talked to, you struggle alone. Like it's your fight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The single moms, on the other hand, and also noticed this, have a huge support structure, right? Huge. I mean, even if they're the offender, even if they're the one who was the abusive one, right? Like there's a full court record that shows that, he was horrible, but it's not public. And the only way to find out any of that stuff would be to talk to the one person who knows, which is the single dad, and nobody does.
So even when you get like when the court appoints like a GAL or something like that, um, in my case, it was very frustrating because we had one GAL and then she never paid her bill, so I actually had to pay her bill for her so we could finish that whole session with the GAL, and it took a couple years, and then so he appointed another GAL because she stepped off our case. He almost seemed like he sided with her almost about everything. And I was sending him videos that I found on my kid's phone. I was sending him text messages because I make sure now that everything is done through text or email. So there's a copy of everything. but it still seemed like when we went into court, he told the judge, and I'm just gonna go off on a little rant, but my oldest daughter wrote a 7-page essay. My oldest daughter's 13 years old. Wrote a 7-page essay that there's words in there that she couldn't even explain. Like she wouldn't even be able to sound them out if she tried. And the GAL took that and was going to bring it into court and say like this was a legit email that wasn't, done by her mother. And I'm just sitting there like, but he wouldn't take any of my evidence, any of my videos that I showed him, anything like that. And I'm just like, I just don't understand why. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. So I don't know what state you're in, but I mean, as far as my state is concerned, um, well, I'll say this. Here's what I'll say. In law school, they teach you an important concept that, I live by to this day. And it's that, the judges, other lawyers, everybody involved in the court system, they're not robots, right? So like they're all people. So they have their own politics, they have their own, opinions, and they're going to do their job, but you can't take the person out of the job. So, if they're thinking a certain way about you, starting out, just because they're a person and they have their own perceptions, that's not going to change. And so I would say that, that's the unfortunate fact of your situation was, and I don't know anything about it, besides what you told me, but, just people are going to do things and make their own decisions just because they have a predisposition to do so, because, that's how they look at the world, regardless of the law.
Yeah, it's very, very, very frustrating. I mean, I've been fighting for 6 years now, just in court, and just like I raised my kids from obviously when they were born, up until I think like my oldest was around like 7, and then me and her mom split up. We were
Mhm.
great for 2 years. We split up. She did something messed up, so we broke up. So we split up and we were great for 2 years. And then as soon as I found another woman in my life, I was the worst dad in the world. I was abusive. I was doing all these things. And then when I went to get custody of, or, 50-50 custody of my children, she was saying all these things. And then I had to start for like 2 days a week for 2 hours. And then, a year later, I got, a sleepover. I got 4 days a week and maybe a sleepover.
Mhm.
And it would build up. And I'm just like, how do you guys take me from I was a great dad, I was, had my kids every day, from now I have to build myself up because she's saying all these things that aren't true at all.
So the new part, and also the same exact thing has happened in my personal life, but it's reversed. So while we were separated, she moves in, and takes my two infants at the time, moves in with this random guy that she met on the internet, right? Doesn't even tell me that she's moving in with some dude, right? And so I have to literally go to court to find out if she's living with another person, another adult, right? And so eventually I find out she's living with this guy. So now what in almost every, case I have where this happens and one of the spouses gets a new significant other, what do you have to do to the dad or the mom, right? Or the other person? You have to demonize them. You have to like totally destroy the guy to your new partner, right? Because if you don't, and you say, "Oh, he's a great dad. He's a great dad. He's perfect. He's always on time. He puts them in classes. This is the stuff I really do. I pay for gymnastics, pay for all these activities, right? I'm always on time. I'm never late." If you say that, right, the new partner will become super insecure and they'll start
Mm.
asking questions. Why did you break up in the first place? Right? Why did he
Yep.
leave? What did you do? Right? These are questions that they don't want to answer. And so, as long as you're the bad guy, as long as you're demonized consistently and perpetually, then that essentially puts them in a position to say, well, he's an asshole anyway. So that's fine. I'm good. I can stay in this relationship. So and that's
I didn't
all
even
it is.
think about it like that.
That's all it is. And I have clients I talk to, the same exact like like carbon copy thing happens. You know, everything's going fine, they're doing time sharing, whatever, and then his ex-wife gets a new boyfriend, right? Or the ex-husband gets a new girlfriend, and all of a sudden you are lower than shit, right? And and you know, it's sad. It's you wish people weren't like that, right? You wish you could have like a consistent, easy co-parenting relationship, but it's just not the case. People are not like that. You know, I would be like that because I know how damaging that is to everyone, to the other spouse, to your kids, right? When you trash the dad or trash the mom, you know, it's not healthy for anyone. But, you know,
Right. And that's it, especially in front of the kids, it makes you look like such a bad guy because, and obviously when they're older, they'll understand. But there were so many times in my situation where I could have been like, oh, your mom did this, your mom's a piece of shit, your mom, blah, blah, blah. But I would never say anything in front of them because I didn't want to paint their mom in some sort of picture. I didn't want them to look at, I didn't want it to affect my kids. Um,
for sure.
and then in the return, I mean, that's how I learned like what alienation was. And I was like, holy shit. And like, my kid, it was so bad. My kid didn't even want to get out of the car. Like we'd go to my girlfriend now, my wife now, but girlfriend at the time, we would go to her house and my kid wouldn't even get out of the car for like 2 hours. I'd have to sit and talk with her. Her friends were there. They were swimming in the pool. They were playing, but she was so scared that she would get in trouble, that she wouldn't even get out of the car. And it's just, when the courts, all they say is it's all about the kids. The GAL, it's all about the kids. Everybody sits there and says we only care about the kids. That's all we care about. You and mom figure out how to get along. We only care about the kids. But then in your situation, when your ex goes and moves in with this new man and doesn't tell you where they live and doesn't say anything thing like that, it's like, I understand the courts can't understand every little detail of what's going on, but how is that healthy for two infants when you're going off moving in with another man and not saying anything to the dad and you have to find out in court? You know what I mean? Like, so it's not all about the kids, because if it was, then you'd actually give a shit.
Right. Right. And it's always been really difficult for me to deal with you know, constantly, you know, picking them up from that environment, right? Because at my house, you know, I have a dog. There's no fighting at my house. Like I don't have a girlfriend, I don't have a wife, right? There are no arguments between me and an adult at my house. There's no, you know, bad language. You know, I run a pretty tight ship, but it's all happy and everyone is happy to be there. I know for a fact that there's fighting that goes on at where they're at now. That there's arguments, there's all kinds of stuff. Uh, and so, I mean, as far as benefits, I would say that at least in my personal situation, that's a benefit. Is that, you know, I'm able to at least bring them to an environment of peace and happiness for half their lives because I have, you know, 50%. Um, and that's a good thing, at least now, you know.
And now in your situation, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but so in my state, I live in New Hampshire, and even if you get 50-50, you still have to pay a crazy amount in child support,
Oh
which
yeah.
to me is just mind blowing. But what do you think about that? Like, how do you, I don't know if you're paying child support or whatever your situation is, but any of your clients, like, have you had to experience any of that side of stuff?
So so here's the thing with child support laws in my state. Um, and I could spend, you know, obviously because of my job, I could spend hours and hours talking about alimony, child support, equitable distribution. But child support in the state of Florida is based on a statute and a formula. And so there isn't really a question about how much you pay. It's like, you know, even lawyers, they're like, well, whatever the law says, that's what you're going to pay, right? So all it is this really cold calculation. You just insert the incomes, the numbers, how much child support costs, and you get your final number. And that's how much you're paying. And usually it's the guy who pays. I've seen ridiculous, you know, 1,200 a month child support awards, 1,360 a month for two kids, you know, and it, the question is, it used to be, years ago, the idea was, the parties would mutually agree and meet a number. And when I say years ago, I mean decades and decades, 70s, before the law changed. And now it's impossible to do that. If you even want to deviate from the child support number, you have to file a motion. And again, this is just, my state. This is not everybody, but what I mean, really, ultimately, what I want to say about both child support and alimony is that to evoke any kind of a change, because I've seen online movements to try and change all this stuff. To evoke any sort of a change would require politicians, and a lot of politicians, to say, we're going to take money away from moms. Because that's essentially what would be happening, right? I mean, the child support goes both ways. Guys pay it, females pay it, everybody pays it, depending on their situation. But really, that's what it would become if some politician ran on that kind of a platform. And so that is the
Right.
unfortunate.
You'd have all the men's votes, but
Yeah, well, yeah, right, and
none of
that's
the
and
women.
that's less than 50% of the vote, and so that's and then all the liberals votes, so it's struck down immediately, and so that's the unfortunate reality of changing the child support law, is that it's just not going to happen, because there is not a single politician in the country who's going to stand up and say, I want to take money away from working mothers, because that's all it would become, and it's bullshit, because a single kid does not cost $1,200 a month. There's
Right. Well, when you start, yeah, and then when you start looking at, some of those celebrities paying just 50,000 or something, just in child support, not alimony, it's
right,
just like, what fucking kid needs that type of money a month? You know?
right, and so you essentially, what it ends up being is you're just supplementing, the lifestyle of your ex, who in a lot of situations was just fucking horrible to you, and still horrible to you, right? Treats you like total garbage, and you have to give this person constantly, every month, here's a grand, here's a grand, here's a grand, and meanwhile they're bashing you, right? And it's like,
Right. And then the hard part is there's no it doesn't give them any work ethic. Like if you're giving them, $2,000 a month, well, why am I going to get a better job or try to, better my life when you're paying my rent? And I really need to do the bare minimum to, survive.
and it
It's
it, it, it provides an incentive to both people, right? It provides an incentive to the payor spouse, ex-spouse, the payor, the husband, the ex-boyfriend, to not get a better job, right? Or to hide
right.
the fact that he's trying to get, a better position or something, which is sad and shouldn't be the case. And then it incentivizes the ex-wife, the ex-girlfriend, to not go and get some type of really, good high paying position, get an education, because, she's already making what all of her friends are making anyway, and she's just getting it from her ex. And so the whole thing really creates a bad situation, a really sad situation. But how do you change it, right? I mean, how would you overhaul that system without a significant social change? And I don't think that's possible, at least not right now.
Right. I mean, I think one of those politicians are going to have to be going through something like this and then be like, God damn, I'm paying this much. And then he'll be able to, make that change or something.
Well, he'll want to make the change, but the thing is that, yeah, the constituents will never, the only thing that they'll support maybe in the future is just to make it go up, is to add more child support, to add different. The one thing that happened recently in my state with alimony is they capped permanent alimony, which I didn't see coming. And that's because
And that's what I said earlier. Child support, there should be a cap on child support, but I do believe in alimony, especially if the wife is really your support system. You're building your company, and she was there for you. I believe in alimony, and maybe there needs to be a certain amount, but child support I think is just so much different.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and like I said, states differ. We have something here in Florida called rehabilitative alimony, temporary alimony, stuff like that. That's all present in Florida. And so that allows the ex-spouse, if they weren't working during the marriage, they're able to get new employment, get rehabilitated to be able to get a new job, go back and get their education. So I would agree with that. Some alimony is good and should be required. Um, but the overhaul of the child support system, while it's not going to happen, it should happen. Because I just don't agree, with a bunch of people who can't pay the amounts that they're ordered to pay, they have to pay them. And so, you go into arrears, the government ends up seizing your license, your whole life gets ruined because you can't pay 900 bucks a month in child support. And it's really sad. And something needs to
Yeah, and
change.
that's also with 50%, it's also you're having your kids as well. So it's like you're not only supporting your household, you're also supporting her household. And it's like,
Mhm.
how do you expect, men to do this shit?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, and to give you an example, like with my situation, because I'm in New Hampshire, so Florida and New Hampshire kind of have similar laws, but if you go to change something in your child support or whatever, you can only do it every 3 years. So when I went in, because I had my job was a little bit lower, I got laid off at my marketing job and got a new job and whatever. It was during COVID, um, so I wasn't making as much. And the judge said to me, "Well, you were able to make this much in the beginning, so you can make it now." And didn't let me, even though my financial paperwork was all, it was all done by the numbers. She would not let me get a lower amount of child support because she said I was capable of getting a higher paying job, which just blew my mind when she said that. And like, here's my ex doing nothing to benefit her life or better her life at all, but yet, you know, and lying on her financial affidavit, but it's cool, like it's all good.
So
It just doesn't make sense to me.
So that's called when they impute income, imputation of income. So they imputed you at a higher income than what you were making, right? I'm guessing you were pro se.
No. I had an attorney.
Oh, you had an attorney. Okay.
Yep.
Um,
This whole time I've had one. Yeah.
okay. I mean, usually they wouldn't impute at a higher income level unless there was, substantial evidence. I have no idea what happened. It's just my opinion because I don't practice in the state. But at least in the state of Florida, they don't impute unless there's, substantial supporting evidence to show that, one party could make way more than what they're making.
I'm gonna have to go talk to my attorney.
Well, like I said, I'm not. It's just my opinion. I don't practice there, so I'm not giving any advice. I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, no, and I mean at this point I've just kind of fucking dealt with it. I'm like, whatever, this is what I'm paying. It is what it is till my kids are 18. It's just frustrating.
Yeah,
Um, it's just so frustrating because I want to be disconnected with her at every level, but it just seems like she still has me, and she's the one who fucked up on, screwed our relationship up, screwed everything up, and yet I'm the one, dealing with the damages until my kids are 18. It's just
I
frustrating.
don't and see that is one of the things, and I'm going to bring this up again, and I know I've said this already. That is one of the things that continues to get me about this whole ordeal that I've been through, that so many guys have been through, is that it's just this like blind faith, this blind like belief in them, in the female. So all I'm saying is that like there's just this like support that they have, you know, all of them, and it doesn't matter how bad they were, and it's just and they just these guys just get screwed, and it's like it's just it keep for me it has to go back to that societal thing, that thing that is like we have this innate learned from young age, at least my generation, Generation X, and even millennials, have this idea that like the women are motherly, the women are nice, the women are social, the guys are not. They're not that nice. Most of the guys are not nice. Most of the guys are just assholes. Like not everyone will say that that's true. Not everyone will outwardly admit that. But I mean, we just have that from when we were really young. And that perseveres, and reveals itself in the ways that we see it happening, in both your and my personal life, and for most single dads. And it's really sad.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just to wrap it up real quick, if you have any advice for single dads out there, what would it be?
Hit me up, and I will help you. No,
I'll
I'm
put
on
your
this.
logo flashing on the screen.
No, no, like I'm not. This is not an advertisement. I'm not trying to get business. I mean, all for free. Like I'm on Instagram. Single dad attorney is my Instagram handle. If you're going through anything like I've been talking about in your personal life, other people have gone through it too. Other people are still going through it right now. I will like help you. I'm not going to do like legal. I'm not. This is not for some ploy for my business. I'm not trying to do that. But I mean, if you have something you want to talk about, if you're like on the ledge or something, like hit me up, talk to me, and like we'll try and work it out. Because I just wanna help you guys. Um, and there's a whole lot of advice that I have that has nothing to do with the legal business, but that could help you anyway, in trying to navigate something like this. And hit me up and I'll try and help you out.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and sharing a little bit about, everyone's situation really and what people are going through. So
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You